Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Soul Centered CEO Show. So excited to be back with you all this week and also to be joined by the beautiful and my dear friend, Ashley Deluca. Welcome, Ashley, to the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so stoked to be here.
So excited to have you. I do want to share a little bit about your background for the listener, just so that way if they don't already know you, they have a sense of what magic you're bringing to the world. Ashley is a podcaster and keynote speaker, widely regarded as the go-to source for all things email marketing. That's what we're going to dive into today for e-commerce and service-based businesses. You've been featured on Thrive Global, Funnel Magazine, GoDaddy, Mind of George, and many others. And I love this part. You'll be the first to admit that you're completely obsessed with avocados, sea turtles, and email marketing. So you're so well-rounded. I love that about you. So fun. And I love how you personally, just before we dive into it, I think it's so lovely how you just bring all of the elements of who you are, just all your favorite things, turtles, guac, all of it to your business, and you just kind of made that part of your brand. Do you want to share a little bit about how you a little bit about your journey, right? Because I know that it's been one, right? We all have stories to tell. And I think it's also important for people to understand what it takes to get to where you are right now, because it's not always an easy path, right? So if you want to dive in a little bit and share, I know the story, but our listeners don't. So I'd love for you to take a few minutes to kind of fill us in on how you created this really beautiful soul-centered business and life, because that's truly what you've created. So let us hear about that.
All the things. Yes. And let me tell you what, it has definitely been quite a journey. And I did not get it right on the first time, the second time, or the third time, as you'll find out. But everything happens for a reason. And one of the things that I've learned is that when I first started off, I actually started off with a little green notebook, and I was writing stories to my little sister about macaroni and cheese. As silly as this is, I could not find the notebook. I'm sure we would all laugh over the campfire about it, though. And I started to dive into writing these stories, and I was like, ooh, you know what? I'm sure I could become a reporter with these macaroni and cheese stories. And as a 14-year-old girl, I dove into learning about HTML, CSS, these library books that were literally bigger than what I was. And my mom was like, listen, they don't look bad. So I think we're good to go. We'll totally just go do your own thing. So I started to build these websites and these blogs and all of the fun stuff until I ended up going to college and getting my first corporate job. It wasn't until I found myself really unhappy, very unfulfilled. I felt very much so stuck inside of a box. I could only fit in this kind of personality to be able to have the brand voice of another company, essentially. And just being unfulfilled, I went to Panera with my best friend, Cece, and she's double the age, double the wisdom, as I always like to joke and say. And she's always like, it's fine that you tell people that I'm old. It's okay. I've embraced it now. And I was like, I can't even with you, but whatever. And so we sat down at Panera, and I was just like, girl, I don't get it. Everybody sold me on this dream that after I went to college, I would be happy in this corporate career and that this would be it. And this is where I'm going. And it just wasn't. It just was not it. And I felt like my soul was calling me to something so much bigger and so much greater with my time and with what I was passionate about doing. And so right then and there, I started my very first business, Blank Slate Media Consulting, where I did social media, graphic design, not really. I was terrible at it, if we're being honest, and web design services as well, too. And I just started off with Craigslist, and I literally was doing a bunch of projects for $175. I'm talking skimming the surface on what I do now, and just you know what, I'm just going to do it. It's going to look awful, and I'm just going to try it. Going through this process of hey, I want to do more. This is it. This is the moment. This is God's calling of Ashley, it is time. You've been sitting around with this little side hustle. It is time to make it happen. And ever since then, I have just dove headfirst. I've fallen on my face with a partnership that failed. I've been down to $300 in my business bank account, not knowing when my next client was coming, and just really focusing on building relationships and really just honing in on my gift of email marketing and bringing that into the world.
I love it because, it's a beautiful example of being brave enough and betting on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people that I think are so afraid to fail that they never give themselves a shot to even try. And so I want to just acknowledge that and say how proud of yourself you should be, because it's a brave thing. It's a really brave thing, especially at that age, like to say, you know what, I'm going for it. And I love that you started when you were 14, teaching yourself all of this stuff. I mean, that's just, such a gift, right? That people have now that hasn't always been available. And I love that you took full advantage of that. And I think, anytime that something doesn't go exactly according to plan, right? There's always kind of that, what's that saying? Like rejection is redirection, and failure is just really just an opportunity to change course, and begin again. So I think it's wonderful. And I think that what's also cool is how you now have just gone for it. You're like, I'm in, I'm 100% in, I'm going deep. And what would you say, for someone maybe that is around your age, or that was on a corporate path, or may be on a corporate path, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give them to say, look, this is what I learned, and this is something that might help you on your journey? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, if I could go back and kind of like redo it, I would definitely pick my one person and follow them and get into their world. One of the biggest mistakes that I made, especially when I was first starting off, is I just took all of the free information, and I was just like, oh my gosh, okay, cool. This person's talking about this. I'm going to grab this freebie. Like, I was one of those freebie chasers. And I did business on a budget. Like when we were going through this process, I was also in the process of buying land so we could build the house that we're in right now. And, my husband was like, listen, this is not like very profitable, so you can't invest into it. And I was like, okay, so I have to make this profitable. But what ended up happening within that is that, like, if I would have just focused on one person and just gone all in on, like, I'm going to be
one mentor. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I'm going to be in Haley's world, and maybe I can't hand over Haley, whatever X amount of money at this moment, but like, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to listen to every podcast episode. I'm going to take the notes. I'm going to do the things. And that's what I actually did with my current mentor that I work with. Is I was like, I'm going to go all in. Like, I'm going to take all your free stuff very seriously. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to like do it and like actually implement the things. Because it's easy to get very distracted with like all the shiny objects and like, oh, look at this person. She's over in Cambo and she's drinking a margarita on the beach. I want to be like her. But like, you have to go with where your soul's calling you, and really focusing on going into and finding that person who's living the life you want to live. And I think that's really important.
I think that's incredibly important. I think so many times we can get distracted by shiny objects, or, this thing, or this strategy, or this tactic, or whatever, or I've got to have all of these pieces in place before I can launch my thing, or whatever it is, right? And it has to be perfect. I think that trusting that you have something to offer and you have a gift to share, and the sooner you can get that out into the world, the more people will be helped by your work in the world. So I think that's wonderful. That's great advice. And for you, in terms of like the way you work with your clients, I know obviously your focus and your brilliance and your gift that you're really honing in right now is around email marketing and communication. Do you want to walk us through a little bit around what is that? Like, do you have a specific framework that you use, or how? Because I don't like emails, so I'm just going to confess. I just want to get it out that I am not an emailer because I don't like to receive them. So I have a real hard time sending them. So what would you say around, like, how do you work with clients like me that are just like, oh, it's such a block or such a resistance, and maybe some of the benefits of working with you around how to get those messages out?
Yeah, 100%. And I hear this all the time too. And like, if I'm being totally frank and you were sitting right behind my shoulder, my personal inbox probably has at least 500 messages in it too, because we are inundated with so much information all the time. And regardless if it's an email or social media or any of the things, like, we're constantly being bombarded, and we're busy entrepreneurs, or we're just busy moms or busy partners, whatever that looks like for you. And so for me, email communication really comes back to writing those stories to my little sister, like being able to create these very exclusive, engaging conversations with my subscribers that they feel like I wrote that email specifically just for them. And I do that by really focusing on creating a very conversational tone and a conversational environment in my emails. And I think that's what sets my specific style of emails apart from everybody else's is because a lot of times we're talking about like, look at where I was published, look at what I am doing, look at what I have going on, or look at this promo or this sale. And people, when they're going through their inbox, they're looking for, where do I fit into this? Like, how does this apply to me? What is in it for me? And so when we can start to create more of those conversations, it not only makes it easier for you to write your emails, because like you're having conversations all day and you do it so beautifully on the podcast and in DMs and on social media, but then taking that over into the email side, it makes it so much easier, because then they start to feel like, oh, I've been having a conversation with Haley over on Instagram or over on Facebook. And like that same tone and that same environment is also just created in the email marketing space. And so it makes it a lot easier to build your ecosystem, but more so on like the email benefit side, it allows you to be able to be super incredibly intentional with who you target with what message and when. And I think that's very extremely powerful, especially for people who are just like us, very soul-centered. Because for me, I don't like to just spray and blast everybody. I'm not like, oh my gosh, here's like my new thing and here's everybody. Like, I send out my specific campaigns to people who I'm like, this is going to benefit them exactly. And it takes time to understand your audience. It takes time to be able to segment them and to tag them and to learn about them. But the benefit is so crucial, because then you're like, okay, this was definitely meant for me. And then they're not getting a bunch of emails that they're not opening. They're like, yeah, the last 5 messages, it was like didn't pertain to me. They're talking to somebody completely different. And so it gives you that opportunity to segment directly to them.
Oh, I love that. And that's so, it just feels so much better, you know? Because I think in the industry, I'm doing, these air quotes if you're on audio only, but in the industry, it's like you're taught to like do all these launch campaigns and do all these things that take, 1 million emails, and it just, it's overwhelming. And I'm always like, opt out, unsubscribe, because it's just, for me, it's too much. So I think by what you've just said around really getting to know your audience, that is a beautiful way to really make it a lot more personal and much more of a connection point than a resistance moment. Okay, so what I want to hear too about, Ashley, is this really huge, exciting project that you have coming up, because I feel like, this is a message that people are going to need to hear, and it's really, really important. And it's is it your first book that's coming? Your first? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
I've written lots of books about macaroni and cheese to my little sister, but like this is like my first official, like actual business book.
Official. Okay. So you have a book coming out, and I love the title, and it's called Own Your Table. Do you want to share a little bit of the backstory behind how you felt compelled and called to write this book, and what the meaning is for you?
Yeah, 100%. So Own Your Table is a couple of things. There's like the email strategy side, and then there's more the personal side. So we're going to start with personal first. Yeah. So growing up for me, I was homeschooled. I was born in 95, so I'm 26 now, to kind of give a little bit of like time perspective here, I suppose. So I grew up homeschooled when homeschooling wasn't really the cool thing to do like it is now. I also grew up with 2 brothers with Down syndrome. And then I also was in a really small town where everyone kind of knew everybody. Yeah. And growing up, I always was trying to be at the popular kids table, because I felt like I was just like a square peg trying to fit into a circular hole, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I was constantly trying to like find that acceptance and be like, oh, if I was only friends with this person, or if only I could be recognized and seen by this person. And like, feeling this like continual thought that I had about like not being good enough, and filling that with different things like, oh, I'm not cool enough, or I'm not friendly enough, or I'm not this enough. And essentially the idea of owning your table is about being able to stand in your own 2 feet and realize that like you can stand in your own power at your own table, and you can create that for yourself. And so for me, I didn't really find my own voice and realize my quirkiness and really embrace the fact that I like avocados and sea turtles and like all of that fun stuff until I started to do email marketing. And so for me, email marketing was kind of like my gateway, which was kind of also the process of me being able to stand behind and be like, you know what, like there are people out there who want to hear what I have to say, and I'm going to just create my own community of people who do want to hear what Ashley Deluca has to say. Right. And it's just been this continual evolution and process of me being able to do this. And so that's why I decided to write this whole book about like, how do you create conversations with email marketing? How do you create your own table of subscribers who are constantly pulling up chairs because they want to hear what you have to say? And also to be able to create it in a way that isn't a table where, again, you just want to be there because that's where the popular people are. It's more so of like, I want to be there because I want to hear what you have to say as the expert, but then also I want to be able to engage with you as well too. And that's where that soul center and that heart center and that relationship first piece comes into it. And being able to create that over in the email marketing space is what I have mastered and what I'm sharing with the rest of the world within this book.
So beautiful on so many levels. First of all, I think what keeps coming up when you're saying around email marketing, it's really just conversations, and it's real authentic conversations in your own voice, right? And I think that's where your special sauce really is helping people find and create a communication style that resonates with their audience, not with maybe everybody, and but that's okay, right? You don't have to reach everyone. It's just those that you're meant to serve and work with. And I think it's so powerful when we give ourselves permission, because I talk really weird and I write the way I talk. So it's like, that's why I've never really been able to have anyone copyright anything for me, because it doesn't sound real. It sounds, a little sticky, right? So, so I think what's beautiful is that you're helping your clients find that authentic voice and then translate it into a conversation that just happens to be in an email,
Exactly.
That's really cool.
And one of the things I'll add to that as well too, because when I first started writing emails for other people, I used some of those strategies and tactics of like, oh, well, just like take some of their content and add a little bit of this. And it was so very much sweet. It was like, and you could tell. And it wasn't until I was like, I just need to take from their conversations and have conversations with them and dive into their content and not just necessarily copy and paste it, but figure out how do they specifically speak and diving into really more so like those communication principles. And that's how it all linked together for me. And it wasn't until that before, it was definitely very much so, I was getting people and they were just like, this just doesn't sound like me. And I was like, well, I don't know how it doesn't sound like you. I'm like trying to figure it. And that's why, because you have to take from the conversations.
Yeah, I love that. And okay, so back to the book, because I think it's so powerful, that process of building your own table, and I think that can be in high school, it could be in your corporate job, or it can be with your friend group or whatever. And sometimes instead of trying to find a seat at someone else's table, you just have to simply build your own. So I think this is going to be a really powerful resource for those that are kind of in that same space, just trying to fit. Where do they fit? And sometimes you don't have to fit in someone else's box. You can create your own that fits you beautifully and perfectly. So I love that so much. And that book is coming when, Ashley? In August, September?
Yeah. Okay. So this is like all the fun details. So essentially we start the crowdfunding campaign July 15th, where you have the option of being able to select a reward or to be able to donate. And so essentially the goal is to sell 500 copies or to reach a 10K mark. And then once I reach that 10K mark, I am taking 70% of anything extra off of that. And I am actually going to be donating it to the Ronald McDonald charities, I always get it wrong. I just call it the Ronald McDonald House because that's how we always referenced it in my family. In honor of my brothers, who it came in handy for them so many times while my brother was going through cancer and all of that. Well, not really fun stuff, but I always say, oh yeah, all the fun stuff during those times, and being able to support them back in that way as well too.
Oh, that's beautiful. So we will have links to all of the things in the show notes for this episode. So that way, if any of you guys that are listening, want to connect with Ashley on your email strategy and email marketing conversations, let's say, and or the book that she has coming called Own Your Table, they'll be able to reach out to you directly and support and connect in some way. So that would be I'm so excited for that to come out, and I can't wait to be part of that project with you as well. So super exciting. Is there any other, as we close, any other tips, advice, thoughts that you'd like to share with those that are listening?
Oh my gosh, I could share like hashtag all the things, but if I had to leave it with anything, I think the most important thing that you can do is to trust your heart and to
Yeah.
trust your soul, like trust your calling.
Mhm.
Because if I would have stayed where I was at when I would probably, I definitely would not be here on this interview with you today, and talking to you guys and through your earbuds, but then also through that as well too. Like, I just think about all of the people that I've written emails for, all of the people that I've spoken to in the DMs who would have not gotten the courage to be able to step out, who would have not had the ability to, or maybe they would have eventually, but like not had the opportunity to have someone to write their emails in the way that I write them or to have the success, right? And I
Yeah.
just always go back to that ripple effect. And if I never would have stepped out, I wouldn't have had to been able to create this ripple.
Right.
And so sometimes it's not all about you, right? It's not all about, in terms
Yeah.
of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's also all the other people that you don't see right now, but that like will come into your life as time goes on.
Yeah, and I think too, just even that specific sliver of inspiration, it's like you have been able to step into your calling, which is
Mhm.
essentially help people message their magic into the world, get their message into the world, reach their people with whatever it is that they're doing, and make an impact. So you're right, you've put your little stone in the water with your business, and then you're reaching your clients, which then can extend out to reach more clients for them as well. So it's really lovely. And maybe I will come around on my email version. We'll see. But I love what you're doing, Ashley. I love the light that you are in the world. It's such a blessing to have you in my world now. And excited to spend more time with you here before too long. And also just watch all of this continue to unfold beautifully and magically for you. So thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was seriously such a blast.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on next week's episode.